All right, let's get right into it. The European Union has just kicked off a huge new initiative to fight global deforestation. And to make it work, they're not just asking for paperwork, they're requiring a very specific kind of digital proof for things like coffee, cocoa, and palm oil. Today, we're going to decode that digital proof, the GeoJSON file. So picture this. You make chocolate bars. How in the world do you prove that the cocoa inside, which came from a farmer maybe thousands of miles away, wasn't grown on land that used to be a forest? Well, the EU's answer is all about data. Specifically, a digital fingerprint of the exact plot of land where that cocoa was grown. This new rule creates a mandatory digital trail, connecting the farmer in this picture all the way to a customer's shopping cart. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we'll look at the why, the EU's new traceability mandate. Then we'll get into the what, the geolocation data that acts as the digital proof. We'll cover the specific language they require, which is GeoJSON, and then we'll get practical, how to build the perfect file, and, just as important, the biggest mistakes you need to avoid. Okay, before we get totally lost in coordinates and file formats, we need to zoom out and understand the big picture. Why is the EU demanding this level of detail in the first place? This new rule, the EUDR, has two main parts. First, the product has to be deforestation-free. Pretty straightforward, right? But the second part is just as important. It also has to be legal, meaning it was produced following all the laws of its home country. We're talking everything from land rights and environmental rules to labor laws. It's like a dual lock system for both environmental and legal compliance. And this quote right here, this gets to the absolute heart of the matter. This isn't about some vague promise or a certification that covers a whole region. No, the entire regulation is built on this one idea: strict traceability, right back to the specific plot of land. Without that precise digital link, the whole system just falls apart. So if strict traceability is the goal, what's the tool they're using to enforce it? Well, that brings us to the what, the actual data that companies now have to hand over. And this part is absolutely non-negotiable. Before any of these products can hit the EU market, the company bringing them in, the operator, has to collect and submit the geolocation data for every single farm or plot of land involved. It all goes into a formal due diligence statement. No data, no market access. It's really that simple. All right, so we know we have to provide a digital map of our supply chain, but what format does that map have to be in? Well, the EU has been very, very specific about this. The one and only format they'll accept is called GeoJSON. Honestly, the best way to think of it is as a digital fingerprint for a piece of land. Instead of a street address, you're giving them a set of super precise coordinates that draw the exact boundary of a property. It's a universal language for geographic data that computers can easily read. Now, you might be wondering, why are they so insistent on only this format? Good question. There are a few key reasons. First off, it's a non-proprietary open standard. That means no single company owns it, and it's free for everyone to use. Second, it locks everyone into a single specific coordinate system, which massively cuts down on errors. And finally, it lets you pack in extra info, like a farmer's name, right into the same file. One standard means less confusion and much better data. Okay, we know what we have to do and why. But what does a good, compliant GeoJSON file actually look like? Let's get into the how. To build a file that the EU's system will actually accept, you just need to focus on four key things. Think of them as the four pillars of a perfect GeoJSON file. If you get these four things right, you are well on your way. Let's break these down. First up, the coordinate system. It has to be WGS84, which is the same system your phone's GPS uses, and you need to be precise, at least 6 decimal digits. Second, your geometry has to be clean. If you're drawing a shape or a polygon, it has to be closed, meaning the very last coordinate is identical to the first, and you can't have any lines crossing over themselves, like a figure 8. Third, use the right format. For a plot of land, you'll use a point or a polygon. Something like a line string, which is for a road or a river, is going to get rejected. And finally, size matters. The entire file you submit has to be under 25 megabytes. Now, to help you stay under that size limit, the EU gives you a really smart shortcut. It's the 4-hectare rule. If a plot of land is pretty small, under 4 hectares, you don't need to draw out the full boundary. A single GPS coordinate, a point, is good enough. For anything 4 hectares or bigger, though, you have to provide the full boundary, the polygon. This one rule can be a lifesaver for keeping your file size down. And just look at the difference here. This is another perfect example of optimization. The before image on the left uses hundreds of little points to draw what is basically a straight line. The after image on the right defines that exact same line with just 2 points, one at each corner. Both are accurate, but the one on the right is a tiny fraction of the file size. Being efficient is absolutely key. Okay, so we know how to build a good file. Now let's talk about what not to do. Knowing the rules is one thing, but knowing the common tripwires is what will save you from getting your files rejected. So here are the greatest hits of why files get rejected. We've talked about open polygons and using the wrong geometry, but you know what's really common? Simple syntax errors, like a single missing comma or bracket. That'll break the whole thing. The system also can't handle polygons with holes, like a donut shape. And the little details will get you. Property names like production place are case sensitive. If you type it with a lowercase p, it's rejected. Same for data types. An area has to be a number, not text inside quotation marks. I really can't stress this enough. This is an automated, data-driven system, and it demands absolute precision. A file isn't mostly right. It's either valid or it's invalid. One misplaced bracket could hold up an entire shipment of goods. So let's bring this all together. At the end of the day, this isn't just some technical task for the IT department. GeoJSON is now the mandatory business language for proving your product's origin to the EU. Understanding and mastering these rules isn't optional. It is now a fundamental requirement for accessing one of the world's biggest markets. And that really leaves us with one final big question. You might know how to create the perfect GeoJSON file now. You have the digital proof. But is your supply chain actually ready to give you that data from every single farm? Because creating the file is one challenge, having the systems in place to collect all that data, well, that's the bigger challenge ahead for everyone.